source, make, and move methods in supply chain management, which includes primarily purchasing management. So I will start sharing the screen, and yes. So this is unit 12 of operations management elective of batch 3. This is on source, make, and move methods. We will be covering mainly 4 topics today. Sourcing and procurement, which sourcing includes purchasing materials, maintaining product catalogs, databases, and supplier directories, and resource allocation, scheduling, and quality management, enterprise warehouse management, and order management, entry, processing, and tracking of order management. As you must have already done the unit on supply chain management, which included the planning stage of the supply chain management. Now we'll be looking at the execution portion of the supply chain management. This includes the sourcing, making, and delivering products and services. These activities span and repeat all along the supply chain of a business. So this curriculum aims to equip students in organizing and managing them right from supplier to customer. See, basically the definition of supply chain management itself is from the supplier to the customer's customer. I hope you have been, Devyang is also joining. Yes. I hope you have understood that in your supply chain management chapter. This topic seeks to achieve the twin objective of improving operational planning and project implementation. So basically, as we said, the first job of in this execution of supply chain management on the supply side is on purchasing management. Okay, so that is where we'll be going into a little detail today. So purchasing and supply management, what are the issues to be addressed? See, every organization engaged in procuring goods and services, I am saying that it's not only for manufacturing industries, but for service industries too, whether it is a hotel or a hospital, or even for that matter, if it is an information technology company, there is still a continuous, constant requirement of procurement and delivery. So this is where it is important. Of course, delivery in case of software products is only is different from delivery of physical goods. But in all other cases, from manufacturing to service, there is a delivery involved, right? So the questions which is asked in procuring or procurement is, did the organization fetch a good price for the procurement? Because one of the places where the organization, as when we talked about the early chapter in operations management, this is the only place where you make money, in the sense that whatever you save adds to the profit of the company. The more you incur expenses or more wastages in the operations, higher price you pay for the inputs reduces the profit to the organization. So in procurement, the first question which happens is that, have you paid the good price for the raw material, consumables, and other things which you buy for the company, including capital goods? Are the suppliers reliable? Because generally when you talk about a supplier, you not only buy once, but you are regularly buying on a periodically. Sometimes even in capital goods, you buy from the same source. May not be every year, but at least whenever you need those type of machines. Will they deliver good quality at the right time? Because that is what is most important. The quality is important and the time of delivery is important. Even when we talked about operations, the four things which are important is quality, cost, delivery, and service. So similarly, we look for from our vendors whether the supply is of good quality or consistent quality and at the supplied in time. Because if they don't supply in time, then obviously you have run the risk of stoppage of your operations, so those kind of things. How efficient is the procurement process? How can an organization benefit from its suppliers? Benefit need not be only from the existing suppliers. The supplier can also come up with some innovative ideas, improvement in his products, improvement in the processes, increase the reliability of his materials which he supplies to you. Sometimes even coming up with a cost benefit which could be passed on to you from these operations. Should the organization develop new sources? Yeah, we will see as we go by how organizations work in terms of multiple sources and single source and all that kind of thing, and benefits of all this. So purchasing and supply management is a structured set of planning methodologies that enables organizations to answer the above questions. There are many other questions also. As we go along, we'll see that all these will be answered. The requirements of the supply chain management is that in operations today, more and more new methods of and automated methods of quality are being introduced, quality management rather. So there is a shift in quality management methods from one of detection and correction to prevention and elimination. I remember, in fact, in one of my neighboring units in Mysore was a axle manufacturing unit. It's a Baba Kalyani group of companies. They are making axles for heavy vehicles. In fact, both the president and the executive director were good friends of mine at that time. So they used to say that, whenever the supplier gives materials to them, it takes at least 1 week before it could be taken up for production, because invariably in the inward inspection, it is in the yard, forgings especially, which come in, which is used for that. There are burrs, there are many things, it is not finished, and sometimes some repairs have to be done for the material to get accepted. So there is a lot of time, effort, money, and sometimes even the supplier's person comes and then starts working at their premises to set right whatever has not been thing. So this used to be the norm everywhere, not only in this, but even in electronics, in any other supplies, that there is a certain, you cannot take it for granted that 100% of the supplies what we get can be approved for production to be taken up for production. So the inward inspection, as they say, inward inspection, then rejected parts being repaired or reworked or replaced for it to be accepted. That was the norm. But at least I don't hear of all this in the last 10, 15 years, at least, because the quality management systems everywhere has improved considerably, and we have moved from the detection and correction to prevention and elimination, what we call as the process control in quality against quality inspections at various stages. That is a major shift which has happened. Of course, in all parts of the world, but more so even in our country, because of course the earliest probably was in Japan, maybe 50 years back. But everybody has learned from those methods, Toyota production systems and from Sony, from many other companies, which came up with many systems of quality management or by process control in the methods. I'm sure you already done statistical process control in the earlier unit.
Yes, yesterday.
Yeah, correct. So statistical process control is one of the techniques which are used in ensuring process control in the manufacturing process. Now, what is important is for you, for us, if you are the user, that you have to imbibe this into your suppliers and the supplier. Only then you can be assured of the inward quality of the materials which you get in. I can tell you a very small instance that where one of my suppliers actually was in Calcutta. Imagine supplying from Calcutta to Mysore. It's a long distance. Travel itself, the physical on-road material itself takes about minimum 5 to 6 days, almost close to a week. We used to give a lead time of 10 days for coming from there. Imagine if the goods are rejected, then what happens? You lose so much more time. So we could, in fact, what we did was, instead of we going there, we called the supplier. We took him through the entire process of statistical process control, how we do in our organization, made him to understand. We understood the processes which he follows and which are all the processes in which he has to do the process control, give us a set of readings which along with the suppliers to ensure that, because we thought about it only because one of our own suppliers, long back before we started our statistical process control, in the late 90s, was Xerox, Modi Xerox. And they were buying from us. In fact, for their plant in Solan, mind you, from Mysore, the goods were going to Solan. Also, although there were manufacturers of these resistors in Delhi itself, Delhi and Punjab and all that, but they used to buy from us. So imagine such a reputed company buying from us, only for the simple reason that our quality was assured by process control. So we used to give, along with every batch of supplies which goes from us, the CPCPK figures, which I'm sure you have done that yesterday, the CPCPK figures, which shows the centrality of the process as well as the variability, how closely controlled the process is, which is evident from both these figures, CP and CPK. So we used to send it with that. We have never had a single rejection in many years of operating with them. And for them, it was a big saving in their inward inspection. Imagine that even if there are about 50 into a Xerox machine. So if you are able to eliminate that by developing your vendor, developing process controls, eliminating inward inspection, then you have saving a lot of costs as such. We'll see a little later in today's presentation what are all the costs which gets into which can be saved if you have a total trust with the customer. Trust in the sense, trust by ensuring that all processes are diligently done by the not only the supplier, but going back supplier, you know, because a supplier's quality is only good, as much good as the raw material which he buys again. So at least three levels before, if you go, only then you can ensure that the quality of what products which you produce is good. So the current requirements is that a shift in quality management methods, changing in cost structures, because any manufactured product today is relatively, of course, if you take out the inflation from the pricing, you'll find that there are only the prices are only less and less for more and more features which are being offered. The thing which, of course, in the case in point is always the mobile phone, like I said, I have always been buying a 15,000 rupees mobile phone. At least once in 2 to 3 years, I change the phone. But with every purchase, I find that I can afford to buy a much better product with much higher features, right, for the same price. Although the inflation of the rupee has happened, but still, in many other cases, of course, in case of cars and other things, it may not be the same. But because of competition, because of affordability, because of many other things, the cost is keeping a tight control on the cost is very, very important. Quick response requirement is not only today models are being introduced, the delivery to the market for any product has to be done very fast. And it's no longer a waiting period of 3 months, 6 months, and all that which used to happen in some cases. So need to create lean organization. Of course, we know that no organization can afford to have unlimited manpower, because manpower costs are very high nowadays. Yes, especially in India. Let me tell you, from I would say 2010 onwards, 10, 12 onwards, the labor costs have ballooned. In fact, the minimum wages have gone up very high. Rightfully so, of course, because we have to deliver the cost of living, deliver the standard of living to our people. That it is no longer a cheap labor market, which as we used to think earlier. So, and it is not right also to consider the that the labor is cheap, so you can have as many people as you want. Underemployment, when you have more labor than what is needed, it actually leads to underemployment. It's actually worse than unemployment. We should rather have the exact amount of people and be able to give them the full work and better salaries than having more people giving less work and giving them less salaries. So along with that, the need to keep your operations tight, need to keep the other costs in terms of energy usage and many, material wastage and other things less. All that leads to a lean organization. Importance of new product development is because in no case will you see that you can have only one model or two model like what we used to have in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Those kind of things no longer exist. Now everybody wants a new product, and whether it is cars or mobile phones or anything for that matter. Now, in any manufacturing, there is different heads of costs. Obviously, raw materials is there, power and fuel is there, salaries and wages are there, consumable stores, repairs and maintenance, administrative expenses, selling expenses, and depreciation on the capital cost. All these forms the operating costs. Now, a survey was done of about 500 plus 565 companies, manufacturing companies, of course, across all this thing. In process industry, it is different. In process industry, raw material component is even more, actually. But in manufacturing industry, this is the kind of thing. About 55% on an average is the raw material component, right? Power and fuel is about 8 to 9%. Salaries and wages about 10%. And so on. Administrative expenses is about 9%. Selling expenses is about 4 to 5%. So if you see that even the study which showed about almost about 5 years at that time, it is more or less the same. Nothing much has changed and nothing much will change. This will remain. Maximum, you can say that you can have alternate methods of fuel. You can have more automated production, reducing the number of manpower, but then the cost of manpower will still be the same because the the wages are going up, right, etc. So more or less, this is scenario is the same in most industries. Now, the philosophy of purchasing and supply, there has been a transition. I would say it has already happened in the last 10 plus years in India. I would say about 15 years before, the thinking generally was that you must have multiple suppliers for every item which you purchase. See, the first thing which comes into your mind is, what if this person does not, refuses to supply, or he himself gets into trouble and he is not able to supply, or he wants, because he knows that he is the only person who is supplying, will say that I want more price in the middle of something. All that kind of scare, people do have. So they always, plus in the government purchase, invariably you must have 3 tenders, minimum of 3 tenders, go for the lowest tender, right? And every purchase need not be from the same person, because the next tender, the same person may not get, it may be somebody other supplier. So multiple suppliers was the norm of any purchase. The transition which happened is that from multiple supplier to a single supplier with high quality. Now, as I told you in my own example, high quality you cannot expect or dictate a supplier to do. In fact, I would say that the big brother, like let us say automobile manufacturer, has to. Now, of course, even in the automobile industry, even the tier 2 supplier, they are all very big companies. Like we talk about Sundaram Brakes or axle manufacturers, they are themselves huge, right? Or steering assembly, Sona steering from let's say Gurgaon, TVS brakes from Tamil Nadu. Each one of them is a big unit by themselves, and they have all gone through this process of the quality transition, across many years, and they have understood the quality. They all, of course, minimum qualification is ISO 9000. They all have that. They have the other certification, global certifications for automobile. If it is an automobile industry, if it is a pharma industry, then you have something else. If it is a food industry, there is some other certification. Not only the certification, their manufacturing processes have undergone sea change. All of them have used process control now in their processes. And they in turn ensure that their vendors follow this. So it has gone to the third level of tier 3 of level of quality control. In fact, it should go up to the tier 5 of quality control, so that to ensure that you get the best material. So from a multiple supplier, the transition has happened to a single supplier with high quality. The result is that resultant is first thing what you have got is consistent high quality. From long lead times, because there are, see, when you have multiple suppliers, automatically he also is supplying to multiple customers. So he is not going to, his priority maybe with somebody else and not with you. Understand? In as much as you have multiple suppliers, so he also will have multiple customers. So his loyalty will change depending upon the price the person pays or the follow-ups which the other person does. And so he may be not giving full attention to you. So there is a lead time problem. From there, we have come to well-selected vendors with short lead times. Sometimes these vendors you also select in such a way they are nearer to you so that the logistics is also taken care of, right? Resulting in short lead times. Long distance from customers, because earlier you never used to bother, because as long as you only accept for destination for you, all other costs are you expect the vendor to bear. But then from there we have come to vendors being geographically closed. Even if in many cases what happens is, even if the vendor is not exactly near you, what happens is, he generally puts up, let us say, a finishing plant nearer to your unit. So ensure that, he gets the components from his various other units, and based on the supply requirements of the mother unit, he would finish the product, test them, and then supply as and when, just in time supplies to the main unit. So this again, good thing, in terms of short-term projects, contracts which happen in project management, basically, this happens in project management. A cooperative relationship using a long-term contract helps, instead of short-term contracts. Like if you're buying some items, every time you tender and then get the prices, instead of that, you have a long-term contract. In most of these cases, the only problem is what if the prices go up, the prices of metals, if it is going up. So we usually also enter into what is called as a price variation clause, indexed to certain critical inputs which are there in that particular product. Suppose there is, let us say, steel and copper. In fact, we used to have this when we were, one of our material items was oil-cooled transformer. So the major items used to be the steel, copper, of course, laminations also mean steel, this thing, and the transformer oil, which is linked to the crude oil which prices. So we used to have one clause which says that, if the prices vary, then at the time of delivery, what are all the indexes, in terms of, let us say, the steel prices as by SAIL, Steel Authority of India, copper from the London Metal Exchange, and let's say transformer oil, crude oil from the whatever, index which is there, with a certain formula. And if the variation is more than 5%, then the price would vary accordingly with as per the formula. It could be more, it could be less. So it is not that the advantage is only to the seller. It could be for both. So you work on such kind of a thing, cooperative relationship using long-term contract, and ensure frequent deliveries. And as I said, applying these formulas so that nobody is a loser. See, in India, we had a fixed price of petrol and diesel. Then once it was removed and it was linked to the oil prices, oil supplies from across the world, we are seeing that every month there is a change in price. Of course, the change in price is also due to the change in excise duty and local taxes in the different states. But that variation is in the hands of the government to do that. But the base price is linked to the international price, for which there is no this thing. Earlier, the governments used to have a fixed price and give a subsidy to the oil companies in the form of bonds. And you see, anyway, that's a long story, whatever has happened in this country, and we are still paying the debts for all the debts incurred from these from the supplier like Iran or the Saudi and all that, and the bonds created instead of payments from the government for which they gave subsidies, which has to be repaid now, right? And we are paying for all that. And if we don't do all that, we will go probably like the Sri Lanka way, whatever happens. The more and more debts you incur, now the payments will be done by the future generation. Yeah. Now, the procurement process is something which we need to understand in a purchasing thing. So we'll go step by step. There is a procurement lead time, which is an internal lead time. We're not talking about the external. Start with the lead time. The first step in the procurement is the identification of what to procure. Of course, that is within the organization. The intent for purchase comes from the respective departments, usually to the purchase department. Usually, it must be complete in all respects in terms of specifications of what is needed, the drawings, if there are drawings which are there, the detailed description of the materials, right? All must be there. So it receives a purchase request, basically, and how much to procure and when to procure. These are the three things what the purchase department gets. And the specifications needs to be finalized. Now, what happens, why we need the specifications clearly from the operations or whichever, it could be from the maintenance department, from the operations, it could be from the quality control department also, to the purchase department. They may ask for something which is very, very stringent, which sometimes may not be, the purchase may not be able to procure because nobody is producing that kind of a quality. Then the purchase department, when it interacts with the possible vendors, have to say that, yes, all this is not possible. This one particular thing you'll have to relax. Is it acceptable? Correct. It could be physical, it could be material, it could be some attributes like the hardness, many other physical attributes. So the first step is the need identification, in which is from the purchase request and nothing. Based on this, the purchasing department goes for a selection of the vendor. Of course, this is a one-time process. I'm saying the first time around, they have to look for vendors and then periodically look for vendors to ensure that, if there is a need to change the vendor, they must be ready. It's not that once there is a problem and then they go and start looking for vendors. This is on the day one, let us say, So you search for vendors who are all the people who make or supply these parts. Yeah. Request for processing, request for quotation, purchase request for quotation is sent to these vendors. Based on their response or their quotations, you negotiate with them. Negotiate not only for the cost, quality, delivery, and payment. See, these are the four things which the purchase department can control, right? Quality, price, delivery terms, and the payment terms. then based on this and based on the parameters which are probably internal to the organization, how they value what. And not only for all materials, see the items required for C-class items may be totally different from what is required for critical or vital items. In case of vital items, obviously the quality of the most important, right? Because it is involves the functioning of the very first thing what you are producing, right? So, like in case of pharmaceuticals, in case of an hospital, the life-saving drugs nobody will play with. You see, they have to be from a certain make or a certain thing. You just can't buy from a new person who says that I also make it. I'll give you at half the price. Nobody will take a chance like that, right? So that it depends upon what particular item. But if it is only just let us say paracetamol, we all know that paracetamol anybody produces, and so it is you go for the cheapest supply or the best vendor there. In fact, talking of paracetamol, I think the micro labs have got into serious trouble. If you've seen the news, some 600 crores or something.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes. The tablet, which was in, I think, pandemic.
Yeah, during pandemic. Anyway, that's looks to be more political. But then, since I was talking about paracetamol, that came into the mind. Dolo 650. Let's not get into that. Just came into my mind. Okay, so order placement is involves fixing prices, delivery and payment terms, as I said, and then a purchase order has to be generated. See, in the purchase order has to be very, very clear on all the terms, including the details of the specifications of the item which you purchase. In fact, many a times what happens is the purchase order is released urgently saying that, you please supply what you supplied last time, kind of thing. It doesn't work like that. Although even sometimes when for buying sabji, we look at things more minutely. And definitely in case of thing, you must ensure that your purchase order, because even under the Indian Contract Act or whatever, when there is a contract to buy something, it is the offer, acceptance, and consideration which are the two important. If the offer is based on what you ask for, the more detailed your specification is in all the aspects, technical and commercial aspects, and the party has accepted everything or accepted with deviations, then only you can say, take that person to task if there is any further deviation in whatever supplies. So the first responsibility is from your side to ensure that everything, the purchase order which is generated is complete in all respects. Never mention about same as in that previous order and all that kind of thing. It should, even at the cost of repetition, it should be in detail and full. Then the order is received by the vendor. The vendor, in turn, you have to insist on the vendor to issue an acceptance of the order. In fact, most of the people don't even bother to do that. In fact, I was a B2B supplier. I was a component supplier to many of the electronics manufacturers. So I am a vendor to the other, the manufacturer. We had a very software generating the order acknowledgement was a software-driven process wherein we convert the party's part number into our part number and ensure that our part number and his part number appears on all the delivery challans, invoices, and everywhere. Why our part number? Because 10 different purchases have different part numbers for the same description. No, we can't. So we have to ensure that when we talk inside our factory, we must have the same part number. So that was being generated by the system, and the price, the delivery terms which are needed. If it is a staggered delivery, then that is the thing. In one purchase order, we may have 100 items, 10 items for this delivery, this, all that variations will be there. Or one quantity of 10,000, but then every 1,000 pieces delivered every month on so and so date. There can be many variations in the order. So your acknowledgement should also be, order receipt or acknowledgement should be in detail, accepting all the terms which are there. To that level, you have to develop your vendor to ensure that they have the system to follow. So follow up with the vendor, then comes the receipt of material as per the system. Once the vendor supplies the material, you get the material, then there is an inward inspection of those material. So all these together is the procurement. From up to this is the procurement internal. Once the order is placed, then till the time you receive the material, it is the lead time, external lead time, and which then results in acceptance of the material goods inside. It is not actually an order acceptance, we'll say material acceptance, you can say, which is the inwards goods inspection, acceptance or rejection. We call it goods receipt note. In usually it's not GRN, it is called as, or goods receipt note, which could means acceptance and rejection, and immediately update the stocks in stores, because stocks in stores is not updated as soon as you receive the material, but only when you accept the material and you have generated the goods receipt note, that these goods are received in as per their purchase order terms, and so these are to be accepted in the stores. This is again a procurement lead time internal, and then it leads to, then the next step, obviously, once you have received the material, accepted the material, you have to pay the vendor. Correct. So the goods receipt note usually acts as an authorization for the accounts department to pay the vendor. So payment and also the vendor rating, because we'll see sometime later what are all the components of vendor rating. So payment authorization, then performance rating for the vendor is calculated based on our vendor rating, and vendor record updation if you are maintaining a vendor records, which most companies do that. This together forms the procurement process in the thing. In fact, I always say, up to this portion, material acceptance portion, we say the material is yours and payment is mine. If I am the purchase order, I place the purchase order. The moment the materials is accepted in the stores, then the material is mine and the payment is yours. Divyang sir, samajh gaya. I used to tell that in this language to my people again, the moment, see, till such time you have accepted the material was mine. Money was yours, right? But once you have accepted the material is yours, money is mine. So you have to pay me within the agreed payment terms, correct? So, in fact, I used to tell my, customers that you're not doing me a favor by paying me the money. We have agreed on certain terms. On these terms, you have to pay, right? Correct? So that is what is very important to understand. Good companies will definitely understand, in fact, So supply chain management alternative approaches, as we saw in the first, second or third slide. Multiple sourcing, which is a usual earlier methodology, dealing with multiple suppliers every time an item is procured and obtaining some gains from the competitive scenario that a supplier faces in the process. It could be many things. In fact, after COVID, a lot of people took advantage of the supplier, but good companies never did that. In fact, they stuck on to the contracts which are there, whether COVID or no COVID. Single sourcing, developing long-term collaborative relationships based on mutual trust and dependability to obtain lower prices, and several benefits that are missed out in the multiple outsourcing model. In fact, sometime earlier, I think I told you, in Japan, they call their suppliers as sister companies. That is because they develop such close bonding with their vendors that they both are transparent in this process. In fact, yesterday I happened to visit, day before, yesterday, yeah, a manufacturer of avionic parts made out of aluminum, which goes into cockpit dashboards and things like that. It's a very high-end item where the material cost is not very great, but the accuracy, reliability, and many other things are extremely, extremely high. Mind you, they depend literally on, imagine if something happens, there is a fracture or some things happens in the item during a flight. You can imagine what kind of catastrophe can happen, right? So the reliability requirements is so high that the purchaser literally looks, they visit their supplier once in 3 months, not only to not for inspection, but to have a close liaison with the supplier on any practices, how things are being improved, and most of the time they don't even talk about price. Idea is not about price. Idea is about the reliability of the product in terms of the quality and delivery, right? And that's what happens in single sourcing. And there, Japanese usually always believe in single sourcing. I won't say even mostly, always believe in single sourcing. Slowly and slowly, the American companies and European companies have also understood this concept. A comparison between the two, of course, if you have to tabulate them, you see, in multiple sourcing, you deal with several suppliers for each item procured. Set up competitive situation among suppliers when an item needs to be procured, which leads to price negotiation every time an item needs to be procured. Because once you see, the supplier is also going to take advantage of you. Suppose he knows that there is a shortage of this particular item in the market. So every time you go for a supply purchase, and the next time when there is a shortage, he's going to jack up his price. You won't say that I'm loyal to you. You'll say, let me make my money when I can. Leads to withholding information, obtaining better price in the process. See, what is not mentioned here is many a times when there is a shortage, the vendors themselves sometimes have cartels. See, a cartel is something like grouping. They all come together and say, we all will quote higher prices. So the vendors will come together, form cartels. Like in case what happens in terms of oil, in global oil sources, the oil exporting countries, the OEC countries, they have cartels. They fix prices among themselves. You have no other option but to buy. Suppliers face uncertainty about the future business because you do not know when next you will get the order, because you are never there. So you do not know what to do with the capacity which you generate, how it will be utilized throughout the period of at least a year. Benefit from their weaknesses, confusion, fear. You see, It drives this kind of thing. Whereas in single sourcing, you deal with only one supplier for every item, maybe sometimes two, but never more than that. And for each of the suppliers, you could have a main supplier and a alternate, sub supplier, and they would know that, say, let us say 70% will go to the supplier, main supplier, only 30% will go. Each knows the amount of quantity he is going to get. And if there is a change in the quantity, probably it will be based on certain parameters of rating, performance rating, which you have to keep up, right? Avoid engaging in conflicts with the suppliers. Engage in joint cost reduction exercises. This is what happens in Japan most of the time. Every time they look for how much reduction you're able to do this year. Instead of talking about high cost increase, they'll say how much reduction you're able to do based on certain improvements in your process, improvements, the gains which you get from your own vendors, and many other things. So that can be openly talked about and worked out. Exchange relevant business information, obtain better business gains. Supplier informed of future business prospects. This is the biggest advantage in having single sourcing. See, earlier you keep everything up your sleeves, don't give away information. So in this case, like if I know that I'm going to go for an expansion, double my capacity, even before the moment I take those decisions, I will be in touch with my suppliers. Now I need double the inputs. So I'll go sit with him. Do you have the capacity? Can you expand? If you do not, what help you need to buy maybe some capital equipment or whatever you want? Whether we can give you those inputs and then offset that in the price, price and payments and things like that. These things you can talk with the supplier and benefit from cooperation, mutual trust, and dependability. So if you see this one single slide itself, you will know that single sourcing is obviously the best way to go about any business. You can say that there are many suppliers, many people who make many products. Everybody has a market. It's not that they don't have a market. It is only when there is a cutthroat competition among everybody and the buyer trying to take advantage of the cutthroat competition, there is a total chaos. Whereas if everything falls in place, then you don't need to incur many costs in purchase. You don't need to get into anxieties and many other things which happens when you have multiple sources. This is a slide where you can see that purchasing, suppose let us say in an ideal scenario like this, there is a single source. Now, in today's totally computerized world, you don't even issue a purchase order. You send purchase order from your computer to their computer and giving an alert. So there is physical issuance is also not there. And vice versa, there is a, you get to know what are the, level at which your order is, so that anxiety is not there. And when it has been dispatched and when it's going to come to you. The quality levels of what you have produced, everything can be, once you have a single open source, you can have all this material. Many costs will be removed if you have that kind of a system. Main costs which are studied using the earlier systems, it is just a case, incoming material transportation took about 23% of the total cost of procurement. Telephone, all that, of course, like today you have emails, whatever it is, but then you need a person to do it. So obviously that cost will be there. It's not just again the cost of actual telephone, but the cost of people who are working under that. It's almost about 18%. Purchase department salary is about 16%. Incoming quality stores 11%. Incoming material inspection is about 8%. Receiving stores salaries 6.6%. Stationery charges in purchase department. Now, actually, today you don't need to incur many of these expenses. Travels and visits to suppliers, yes, you must have. I would rather say this 3% should go to 10%. Not for anything else, but to establish rapport with the supplier. Total comfort level, rapport, trust.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Divya?
Yes, absolutely, sir. It must be 10%.
Yeah. So that, you establish that rapport with the supplier, right? So, but at the cost of reducing on many other unwanted expenses, materials planning and control, insurance charges, of course, that will remain the same, other costs and depreciation and all that. So many of these, like if you have total, supplier quality acceptance, then you can do away with a lot of inspection. You can do away with incoming quality controls. Many of these costs can be done away with. And the anxiety associated with this can also be removed. This is from one of the chemical units. This is a case in thing which was given in that book on operations management by Mahadevan, or I am Bangalore professor. Yes, Titi. Yeah. So the operations, experiments with one of their suppliers associated capsules by sharing data, process improvements, extensive training, technical support, and another company with printed aluminum foils. They could solve some problems because, see, you can do research and development in collaboration. In many of your own cases, improvements in quality, improvements in processes, improvements in method of production, delivery, many things can be improved if you are in a totally collaborative process and if you're a single supplier. See, if you're a multiple supplier, you go to him and say, why I should do? Are you going to give me the order? That's what he's going to ask, correct? So there is no trust involved. Whereas if you're a single supplier, you can work closely to ensure that there is a seamless improvement of everything for mutual benefit. Quality problems. In so much so, I've known places where even there is a single supplier, I used to buy copper coils, from only one source, from Bangalore. Those spools which they come. What this guy used to do was every 3 months, when he comes and delivers the copper, he will take back all the old, spools. And he never charged me packing charges, which used to be about 2%, 2 or 3%. Now I'm saving those 2 or 3% because we have that single supplier and all that. Now if it has multiple suppliers, how do I keep track? Kiska spool tha? I have to keep track of many things. He will say, "Ye to hamara nahi hai, ye quality ghatiya hai." Right? So many of these, many advantages can be there when you have a single supplier. Of course, quality control problem in sugar, because then you know that, when the quality problem happens, there is something called traceability when you produce. You must insist on traceability. In fact, in my case, if somebody comes with a complaint, I know exactly this batch was produced on these machines. Suppose I have 5 major processes, each of the processes on which machine it was produced, on which shift, by whom, attending to that machine. When you have that level of traceability, you know where the problem originated. And if it is a machine related problem, you can set right, prevent. Then we have 2 things. One is called a preventive action and there is a corrective action. Preventive action is to take something immediately so that it doesn't happen again. And corrective action is to change the process or procedure and ensure that it will never happen again. So these are two main things. So in one of the cases, as he says that there is black particles in sugar, then it was finally traced to a cast iron pipe in the sugar plant, which was rusting and was bringing it out. Yeah. So you go back and so yeah. So the vendor meets happen. Most of the companies have vendor meets. They give awards to best vendors. All that kind of thing. So stages in supplier development: initial screening of potential resources, determine the volume of business and the existing history with that particular supplier. Search the existing vendors first, of course. Sometimes what happens, even if you want a new product, the existing vendor is able to develop that product. Now, that is better than going for a totally new vendor. So initial assessment, visit of the vendor works, placing a sample order, and based on that, then place the bulk or regular order. This is a part of the new vendor development process. So ultimately results in coming closer to your potential sources. And of course, these are all the advantages: prompt payment to suppliers, establishing, etc., etc. So a clear understanding of what is expected by both the parties and the consequences of not meeting them is clearly understood. Many a times we know that sometimes the parent company is in problem. If you have the good relationship, they tell you that we are in problem because of so and so thing did not happen or whatever. Then we can say that, okay, we understand. Please let us know when you're. So it is a mutually acceptable way of working. So all this works towards a single source and single source self-certified deliveries. As I said, that is from straight to the shop floor, that kind of a thing. We do, in fact, in many cases, as soon as the material comes, it is taken directly to the shop floor because of all these kind of inbuilt checks and cross checks which are there. This is some statistics. If you see that Divyang, you told the number of contact with the suppliers. The US company, you see the number of man days, and see the Japanese plant. समझ गया ना?
About 12.50%.
Yeah, correct. So we said 10%. अभी बोलते हैं ना उसका तो ज़्यादा ही होता है. So actually, you should be in close touch only to ensure that you understand and make sure that nothing goes wrong. Straight away, materials from the output of the vendor goes directly into the production. In fact, you'll be surprised how many of I think I also told you that I had an experience of producing a very complex machinery in 3 days in Yokohama. None of the materials were inspected. None of the materials came and went directly onto the machine. Came and directly went to the machine throughout the day. So imagine the level of confidence which is there, right? And zero inventory. He delivers exactly the quantity which is needed. At the end of the day, end of the production, equipment is shipped. All your remaining is the tools which you have brought, no inventory. And they pack off and go. See, that is a level of confidence that is needed. Suppliers certification program is a, for a single sourcing certification program. These are all the things, the company should take into account: suppliers' effort in value analysis, their performance in the contract, their cost structure, their financial capability. That do they have resources to backup in case some things go wrong and all that, or do they get stuck? All that, their quality assurance systems and methods, and their equipment capability. What is the type of equipment they have? In fact, I was yesterday, as I told you, when I visited this particular plant, the kind of power which we have and the power fluctuations, is affects the process so much that this gentleman has put a 200 kVA uninterrupted power supply to ensure that the drilling spindles operate at the same speed and for the particular depth and other things. So imagine the level of detail that person has gone in to ensure the quality. Now imagine, he says that I have no problem. In fact, he supplies for one of the Tata companies, and he says that they are not even looking at another vendor. See, so the kind of, that is a level of trust you have when, and if it is again as you are able to invest in all this again, because you know that you are fully loaded, they want this, and you can assure the quality, right? So equipment capability, all this ultimately leads to getting a single source certificate. Then we also have what is called as a vendor rating. Of course, all companies do that, and you have to give a feedback on the vendor rating also to the vendor, right? It's usually yearly, but it could be half yearly also, or quarterly. Now, this is not strictly, these weightages are not strict, but this particular company uses these weightages. Like for quality, they use a 28 out of the 100% weightage. Quality is 28%, delivery reliability 24%, price 21%, delivery terms 14%, payment terms 13%. Okay, now what does it mean? The yardstick for measuring performance against each of these factors on a 5-point scale, 5 being excellent and 1 being below average. If the quality level is less than 1,000 parts per million, I do not know, of course, the engineer, Devang, you are an engineer, you'll understand. Parts per million means it's like if you're doing the statistical process control again, you have that ppm level, 6 sigma, 6 sigma levels, 0.99993, So that level of quality obviously is an excellent one. And let us say, if they find in their inward inspection, or they don't do 100% inward inspection, there will be a sample inward inspection maybe. So they give this rating, let us say, from different suppliers, if they are more than, for different items. Delivery reliability, if 100% is this much, 1 day late, 2 day, 2 to 4, that kind of thing. Then you have the price. See, generally, most companies give a target price at the beginning of the year when they negotiate. Now, if you accept the target price, obviously it is a good. But if you are not able to, then they will say yes. But then obviously you go down on the vendor rating. Delivery terms, free delivery at your stores, obviously the best thing which they want. But there are different other methods. You give different rating. Payment terms, of course, if your company's norm is 60 days and he accepts 60 days, it is good. But if you want immediate money, then obviously the rating will be, and insists on it, then the rating is better. So based on this, you have, vendor 1, vendor 2, vendor 3, all that. You do a rating and give this score also to the vendor that this year your vendor rating is this much. And these are all the levels of actual performance. These being actual figures, the vendor has no option but to accept it and try and improve for his next, the next year. Correct? Because he will improve only when he knows that this is what happened. And I can improve on these parameters, on this I cannot improve, right? All that. So he can concentrate on that. So we have next the measures of performance. Basically, basic supplier performance, long-term partnerships, joint cost reduction, and new capacity building initiatives are the measures of performance for any vendor. Of course, these are the details. I'll not get into thing. Anyway, I'll be sharing the PPT. You can go through it because it will take too much of time. Then we have many of the items. We have outsourcing, like we know that, there is a today make or buy. Whether we should do this, sometimes make or buy may not be only for the item totally, but sometimes for partially also. That for some reason, your capacity is not sufficient to produce during a peak period. You can buy that particular process or a sub-assembly or even the finished goods from somewhere. So business process outsourcing, BPO means business process outsourcing, the tendency of organizations to buy rather than make in-house their requirements. This has become more and more prominent because the understanding of quality and process control and delivery has uniformly improved across at many levels, right up to the small scale industry level. In fact, today you no longer tell that the small scale industry doesn't follow many things. No, in fact, many of them have same or better quality standards. Trend towards outsourcing several is driven primarily by cost, core or non-core activities. Is it the main our thing? Or if not, why should we do that? We'll outsource this. Normal outsourcing is obviously the usual, you can say, payrolls and canteen, transport, many of those kind of things are always, or gardening, many other things are outsourced, But even in the processes also, many of these things, if you have a very good vendor, I would rather outsource rather than try and make it ourselves. No. Managing capacity expansions is easier to expand if you have enough outsourcing. And strategic restructuring, suppose you want to get away from certain items. Like one of the companies where I'm associated with got away from certain range of products which they were manufacturing and were purely labeling those items because that was only proving to be more expensive to make rather than get it outsourced. As long as you're able to assure quality and then both from the supplier end and ensure that you evaluate quality of all the supplies before you put your brand name. In fact, if you've heard of white labeling, I don't know whether you've heard of white labeling in retail. That's very common now. White labeling is somebody wants, let's say Surf wants to produce Excel, right? Now, I'm just saying, giving it as an example. Of course, Surf may sue me if it is not true, but this is only for an example. Now, it is not necessary that every product is made by them. They may have a vendor company making the entire product, including the packaging, everything, but to the specifications of the parent company. In fact, what is happening in China today is all white labeling. Apple computers are all made in China. You name any product, it is all made in China. It is not that in most of the cases, Apple may not be having their own factory in China also. Somebody else is producing. But they are producing exclusively for Apple and maintaining the standards of production, right from material to production to testing, everything as per the company's requirement. So in some cases, what happens in white labeling, the same plant, they produce for different brands, having different lines of production in their own factory. So these people are basically white labels product thing. At the end of the production cycle, they attach the label or package to the customer to which they want to deliver. So strategic restructuring actually happens when it's easy for you to get in and get out of products if you are having outsourcing. Then we have e-procurement. Today, even the government is doing e-procurement. You know very well. Government of India, many state governments, uh, uh, even in fact, the recent initiative of the government is basically because of e-procurement, because to do away with many of the bad practices in procurement which are happening for many years. The more contact you have when you deal with government, the more the C word is there, happens, right? So to do away with that, better that there is e-procurement. Even most private companies, large corporations, resort to e-procurement again because you can do away with a lot of costs, right? So e-procurement denotes the set of strategies a purchase manager could employ to identify appropriate sources of supply, finalize the terms of trade, and place the order, all done electronically. Three types of e-markets are there: collaborative market structures, quasi-market structures, and neural market structures. I will not get into the detail, because we are three more topics are there, and for today, anyway, I'll be giving you this schedules you can go through in and if you want, you'll have to, of course, each one of them need explanations. I myself are not very familiar with some of them. In collaborative structures, you have what are called as extranets, and then TPNs. Web EDI means electronic data interchange, EDIs. Then you have buyer-centric private marketplace, supplier-centric private marketplace, consortia marketplace, forward auctions, reverse auctions. In fact, just the other day, I was talking to one of the startups from Ahmedabad, and they have set up a virtual, human-assisted e-market. This is the first time I've heard of it. They call it as a UPO, Unified Purchase Operation, or something like that. Source, where they are creating assisted electronic purchases to even villages in India. It's an excellent concept. In fact, some of much more than what it is. This is something totally new. Excellent thing. It's a startup, Ahmedabad-based startup. So more and more types of electronic e-markets are emerging today. Then, of course, neutral auctions, online auctions take place today. Exchanges, aggregators, of course, we know aggregator models, and like Ola is an aggregator model, Oyo is an aggregator model. Many other, kind of aggregator models are there. And online communities, all these together, have different kinds of things handling the market. And if you know that the new initiative of Nandan Nilekani that is also coming up to take on the challenge of Amazon and Flipkart kind of a e-commerce that is unified. Like we have UPI, there is again UDN or something like that. That is also coming up, and I forget. I'll get back on that. You can search for that. Now, examples of each one of them is available here. You can go and check with yourselves. They're all web sources and the web addresses are there. Once I give it to you, you can take a look at something if you are interested. Right. Implications of e-procurement, restructuring.
Sorry, sir. Hello. Our one company is working with the Ariba, www.ariba. Last site, Ariba. Our ones, we are a vendor of one company.
Ariba,
they are using Ariba, yes.
Ariba hai idhar. Correct? Buyer-centric private market.
Yes,
Ariba. Yeah, correct. No, there are many of them. So that's why. See, I'll give it to you. You can go through some of these,
Sure, sir.
Yeah. So implications of e-procurement, restructuring the supply chain will be inevitable for every organization, right? Because the complexity is growing and you have to make it simplify, and that you can do only when you get into e-procurement. Some suppliers with close relationship will be required to participate in more competitive mechanisms. Still others will be placed with fiercely competitive neutral market structures. Traditional channels and intermediaries may be disintermediated. Launching several pilot projects in the next 2 years will be valuable exercise for organizations. So, as a whole, we have seen that the recent developments have redefined the role of purchasing and supply, which includes new quality management initiative. I won't say new because now it has been established. Instead of that, quality management initiatives, you can say. Changing nature of cost structures, that's become a norm now. That creating lean organization is an imperative, whether you like it or not. Quick response requirements is again, it's more for survival, because if you don't do, somebody else will do it. A typical procurement process consists of 6 steps. We saw that in the detailed flow diagram which we saw. Need identification, vendor selection, order placement, order receipt or material receipt, as I said, material acceptance or goods acceptance, vendor rating process. Traditionally, organizations utilized a multiple sourcing model for vendor selection. However, in recent times, organizations employ a single sourcing model. The single sourcing model provides several advantages over the traditional model. Supplier certification or vendors rating are important components of modern day supplier development and management initiatives. The make or buy decisions is made on the basis of criticality of the item under consideration, cost, capacity issues, strategic restructuring initiatives, as we saw it just some time before. So e-procurement offers several advantages to an organization, such as, imagine a company which is procuring thousands and thousands of parts. You have no option but to go in for these kind of initiatives. Okay. The next topic, I'll continue and finish it as fast as possible. In fact, one of the requests from Krishna was that I see that she has dropped out. She wanted from 6 to 8, instead of things. So from next Sunday onwards, we'll have it from 6 to 8. See, because although it is a Sunday.
Yes, sir. Okay, it is okay with us.
Yeah.
Sorry, me.
You may have other programs also to attend to. Yeah. So we'll have it from 6 to 8 because I see that she had to go somewhere. She told me earlier. So anyway, she will look at this presentation later. See, this was one of the topics which are given, but I think that this has already been addressed. See, resource allocation actually comes in the master production schedule, which we had already done. You see, I have done this with the whole thing, so MRP1, MRP2 and all that, materials planning, master production schedule, all that. And quality management actually deals with the TQM and statistical process control. Again, both of which you have already done, right? You're done TQM? Divyang, TQM?
Yes, sir, yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday. So this I will not repeat. That's why I just put those things here. I said there is no need because it has already been done. Okay. Then we come to the enterprise warehouse management. Now, these two, I would say, they are taken from today because of the high volume of retail. The entire process of warehouse management and the next topic, which is order management, both are totally automated in many companies. Because at the now we are coming to from the supplier to customer. The previous one was in-house. Now both enterprise warehouse management and the order management is on suppliers, customer and customer's customer, right? So the supply chain management is integrated when you talk from supplier to production in your own organization or product realization in your organization to delivery to the customer and customer's customer. The intermediary immediately is the warehousing. Now, warehousing does not mean that you have it in your own. It could be a rented warehousing. It's a huge business. In fact, one of the startups whom I was mentoring, again from Noida area, is into this, and she's a very small player. And when you say very small, meaning her turnover is about 10 crores, and having a huge warehouse facility. So you can imagine it's a hundreds of crores worth of business is warehousing itself. So obviously it has fully automated because multiple items are going across the country from multiple sources to multiple hubs. And yet you'll say Amazon Prime says that I'll give you delivery within 1 day, correct? So imagine the complexity of how the movement of logistics happens, right? If somebody says I'll give you after 10 days, you're not interested. You want at least within 2-3 days or the next day. Everybody wants that today. So all this is possible because of order management and warehouse management. The first one coming out of the production is the warehouse management. And the next one is the customer's customer, which comes to order management. So a warehouse management system is a software application that helps manage the operations of a warehouse or a distribution center. This actually I have taken from IBM, basically, right? Just I'll tell you the source from where this particular thing I have taken. Warehouse management system or WMS applications offer capabilities such as receiving the goods, putting them away, locating the stock, managing the inventory, counting the cycle, the movement. Cycle means movement of material. Some is going, some is coming. And you heard of first in, first out, all those kind of things. Obviously, these are very important to maintain the stocks. Task interleaving, wave planning, these are terminologies which are used within the warehouse management systems. Order allocation, order picking, replenishment, packaging, shipping, and management. In doing all this, you have labor, so managing the labor and automated material handling equipment interfaces. In many of these warehouses, there is no physical movement of people happening. Most of them are highly automated. In fact, I have seen a fully automated stores in a company, Bemel, which you have heard, Bharat Earth Movers. This I'm talking 20 years back.
Oh.
So, yes, 20 years back. A fully automated. In fact, they don't have manpower to handle. The entire thing is computer controlled from, a person sitting there that you want this material. It's called the BOSS system. 20 years back, so today there'll be much more, advanced. Only
Correct.
now they have, the systems now go vertically because of want of space. 18 stories and all that, above. And fully automated. It's no longer a flat systems.
I have seen the material handling equipment that are auto guided vehicles.
No, correct. Where?
In Dr. Reddy.
Yeah, correct. See, now it
In
is
warehouse.
no longer possible to do a manual because, see, one is prone to errors, prone to spillage, wastage, and many other things. Then prone to wrong storage, wrong labeling, many other things. And number of items are huge. So it is a total chaos if you don't automate.
And we did RFID scanning sensing system 10 years back.
Yeah, there is RFID. Of course, barcode is a basic.
Yes.
Then RFID. And, RFID is the easiest way, because there is a non-contact totally. At least in barcode, yes, you have to go nearer to the thing and have a physically contact. Yeah. So these systems incorporate mobile devices along with barcode and possibly, he says now definitely RFID scanning sensing. What is RFID? Radio frequency interface detecting. So RFID scanning and sensing to form the transactional foundation of a warehouse management system. It includes the integrated functionality, what is referred to as extended WMS or warehouse managing system capabilities as components of a WMS evaluation. Now, this is offered by IBM. So similar things are offered by many companies. These are again SAP. SAP also has their own warehouse management. See, all of them have, These include labor management, slotting, yard management, voice picking, parcel manifesting. These are some of the features which they are giving. Value-added service, light manufacturing, kitting. See, kitting is something which is used a lot in electronics. What happens is, like, let us say, if you've seen a printed circuit board, the printed circuit board consists of, let us say, one PCB and about, let us say, 10 different components in different numbers. The loose components together form what is called as one kit. Now, if I'm going to produce, let us say, 1,000 of this PCB in a day, then I need 1,000 kits. Each kit must contain the actual number of items which are required to produce that particular thing. Mind you, if I give that number, if suppose it is, let's say, manual production in the assembly line, it's the easiest to do. Kitting is also used for many other things, even for sales and many other advantages. Okay. So that's why it's called light manufacturing. It is no longer manufacturing, it is light manufacturing or kitting. And third-party logistics billing. So we do not, however, consider standalone solutions in these areas. That is what IBM says. So typically, enterprise warehouse management consists of this, and it's a very, very commonly used today for delivery of goods from the manufacturing point to the supplies which go out. Then comes the last one, which is the order management from the customer order, let us say, right? The order from the other end, which comes. So order management starts when, imagine yourself placing an order in Amazon or Flipkart or Myntra or anything like that, as simple as that. Okay, let's see what happens in that. The order management starts when a customer places an order and ends once they receive their package or service. Correct. Now, you do not know what happens in the back end of all this. Today, you are sitting at home, you opened your mobile, you want this item. I do it every day. My wife does it every day. We buy from Amazon, we buy from Flipkart, we buy from Big Bazaar, we buy from Amazon Daily, Dunzo, many applications which we use, even for food delivery today, my says we got from Swiggy, Zomato, right? So all these are now very common, right? So it starts from the time when the customer places an order and ends once they receive their package or service at their point of receipt, whichever it be. It could be when you go to a place like in a hotel, or when you go to your hospital, or you receive the goods at home. Okay. It allows a business to coordinate the entire fulfillment process from order collection, inventory and delivery visibility to service availability. The workflow involved can differ based on the company's needs, but a typical order management process includes 3 steps. The customer places the order through an automated form. In this case, usually an app, right? A sales team member checks the details and confirms the order. Now, there may be a variation in a B2C type of situation and a B2B type of situation, right? So B2B is you're dealing with limited number of items with limited customers. Whereas B2C is very large number of customers with very large variations of goods which can be ordered. A warehouse employee confirms shipping details, generates an invoice, and fulfills the order. Pick, pack, and ship. Now, all these have been standardized, processed, and even small startups today are able to join the entire process of this order management. Inventory management levels are monitored as they fluctuate with the demands of the business. Like in food delivery, it tells you that these are items which are, they go to the level of saying that these are not available. Your thing is closed at this particular point. So you no longer order. When you order, you are sure that you are getting that item. And sometimes like Amazon says only one item left. How do they say? Correct. In fact, I never buy when they say one item left, because you know why? It could be a returned item which they have in stock, I never buy the item when they say one item is left. So the inventory management is very important, because all these are done automatically at the background, across multiple sources, multiple things. So in short, what we have covered today is supplier to a customer's customer, which is what all the processes which happen in the thing. But yesterday you did on the supply chain management, on planning and other things, Okay. So that is it for today. I think I'm going to leave you to go. If you have any questions, you can ask before we leave. So Titi, you can also switch on your system. Because I didn't give a break. I said, let me finish off, because we started late. So
it was a nice session, sir. I really enjoy. Actually, I have actually your lecture give me some views in my mind of my experience.
Yeah. Obviously, that is the idea. The idea is to kindle your brain to think, where all it has happened, where all you can apply. How do you visualize this, kind of, you should be able to visualize, that's right. Ultimately, that is what it is, anything what we see, read concepts, Even when we read, that's what we do constantly. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right. Okay. See you
Good
next
night,
week.
sir.
Yeah. Okay.